get married. And the reason you're going to say yes to that person, by the way, get married as quickly as possible. Every single person in this room, get married as quickly as possible. Like, get it done now. Okay, get married now. Say, I'm getting married this year. Everyone say, I'm getting married this year.
I'm getting married this year.
Okay? And now Shmuel over here, how old are you, Shmuel?
I'm not
15?
getting married this year.
Don't say that. Don't say get married this year. But what did I originally say? Everybody get married as soon as possible. You get married as soon as possible.
Why?
And don't listen to these people.
I'm already married, so.
But
What do I say? I've been married for 30 years. What do I say?
Thank God. Very nice.
you remind me of a guy who got divorced and no one knew he was a famous guy, but then he moved to California and got divorced. And he didn't live in California, so no one knew he got divorced. So then he got engaged, but he got engaged to a famous person. So the whole world found out that this famous woman was marrying this guy. And everyone was like, he's going to be married to 2 women. Because everyone was like, he's married. Everyone knows him. He's a married man. But people don't think about that when they run off to get divorced just because they're just going to go hibernate and get divorced. They don't realize that everyone thinks they're married still.
Why do you say get married as soon as possible?
I don't know if you want the answer to that question.
I'm interested.
So the question was why get married as soon as possible. So there's a couple reasons, but I mean there's so many reasons, but one of them is you're doing absolutely, no offense, you're doing a horrific job of being single. Okay? You're doing a horrific job. Everyone who's single is doing just a horrible job of that. And you must stop trying to do your life alone, which is a whole subject in itself. But it's not okay. And so then you'd say, well, have a boyfriend, have a girlfriend, or move in with somebody. Wrong. You don't move in with somebody, or you don't get a boyfriend or a girlfriend, because that is an insult. Anyone who would date you should be slapped. Because if they're willing to date you without a commitment of marriage, that means that they're just like, as long as I can see the exit sign, I'll hang out with you. Yeah. You go to the restaurant with a guy and he keeps positioning himself to see the exit sign on the restaurant, Just got to keep my eye on the exit. Anyone who's willing to date you should be slapped, period. Okay? And when you're ready to get married and then you date, anyone willing to date you is a serious contender. That's someone who's worth dating. Whereas if you're not willing to get married and you're not ready to get married, which means, and by the way, how do you get ready to get married? How do you get ready to get married? It's very simple. It's very simple. You make a deadline. How do you get ready for finals? A deadline. How do you get essays done in university? You have a deadline. How do you get packed for a trip? You have a deadline. Now, if you're like most human beings, you wait till the last minute. But with a real deadline, you're done. You're done. So, well, you may say, well, how do you make a deadline for getting married? And the answer is that you write a resume, you put it in an envelope, and you have a deadline when you're going to hand it to the matchmakers, to people who make matches. Now, some of you are like, I don't want some random person making a match for me. Okay, fine. Stay single. Stay single, because they're good at that. I don't think you would do anything without the people who are good at it, especially if anything worthwhile. There are certain people with a gene for networking. You need that gene to make matches. And everyone always comes up to us Aish rabbis and the Orsamaic rabbis and the Mayanot rabbis, and they're like, oh, he's so insightful. Surely he'll know who I'm supposed to marry. But you go ask all those people how many shidduchim they made. Yeah, and let me teach you a little Spanish. Nada. Yeah? And that's not even the right word. How do you say none? Nunca. Let me teach you a little Spanish. Everyone say the word nunca. Nunca means none. Yeah, because the people with that specific gene to know who goes with who, they're generally emotional basket cases, by the way, unless they've done serious work on themselves. They're interesting people. Not the kind of people you want to spend more than a half hour with, just handing them your resume and giving them somewhat of a sense of you, and then get out of there and let them get to work. But you have a deadline. If you know you're handing your resume, your marriage resume to somebody on this and this date, I promise you'll be ready by that date. Just like you're ready for everything once you have a date. But the nebulous, like, oh, I'll get married someday.
Someday.
Forget about it. Forget about it. And you want to know something? I'll go one last reason, then we're going back to this. One last reason is by the time, no offense, I don't even know who you are, but it's like this. Make this about someone else. But by the time you get your act together and finally decided you were ready for this, you're going to turn around to the dating pool and you're going to see a used car lot as far as the eye can see. Okay, it's a rental used car lot. Yeah, it's called Rent-A-Wreck. Yeah, and it's as far as the eye can see because it's the people in your pool. Which people are in your pool? The same people are in your pool are the same idiots who thought they should stay single for several years. And so welcome to your dating pool. Good luck. Have a nice marriage, bring boxing gloves. You need a mouthpiece for this marriage. So the whole point of marriage is having a safe place to put your heart. But how are you supposed to have a heart to put safely if it's been egg sliced from every direction in every stupid relationship that you gave your heart to without the commitment, meaning all those relationships that had exit signs? There's no exit from marriage. I mean, there is, but it's hell. If you want to have an intimate relationship with someone, you have to have hell to pay. Otherwise, you'll always hold back. And this is one of the saddest things, and this falls more on girls than boys, is people are so lonely that they'll pretend someone's holding their heart. Meaning they'll fool themselves into thinking they're letting someone hold their heart. But they don't realize that they're unconsciously withholding most of the weight of their heart. They're kind of pulling it off because they don't want to get dumped. They don't want to be a liability. They're like unconsciously making themselves as low maintenance as that they're holding their heart should be as low maintenance as possible. But all of this is just an indication of how hurt and lonely that I'll even pretend someone's holding my heart for a month, for 6 months, for a year, for 2 years, 3 years. And this is why you'll notice how many people get divorced. You know what? I'm not even going to say that. You'll notice that people after they get married realize what a weight their spouse is. They didn't realize how heavy it is. And that why? Because she finally let the weight drop. And now he's like, oh my gosh, this isn't who I married. And the answer is, you're right. I mean, she wasn't really letting you hold her heart because she was trying to keep herself from getting dumped all that time. Now, do you think I could keep going on this? You think I got about 20 more levels of why get married as soon as possible?
Yes.
Yes, I do. I'm not going to keep going on this. I could just do the whole class on this and go. We would just go detail after detail after detail after detail. It's a whole long outline of why get married as soon as possible. And when I say that, obviously I'm saying get ready. But the only thing that will get you ready is the deadline. So just make a deadline and say, I'm getting married, but I'm starting serious dating for marriage from this point on. And just one more little piece of advice is do not let him touch you. Again, anyone who's dating you should be slapped. Don't let him touch you. He may not touch you. Do not let him touch you. If he wants to touch you, slap him. Give him a cold shower. They don't get the goods. They don't get the goods until they put an insurance policy on your ring finger. This was a secret that women knew for thousands of years. But in the whole women's liberation and feminism that killed females today, they were like, those women from the 1950s till the late 60s were like, we want to be like the men, we want to be like the men, we want to be like the men, these originators of this. We want to be like the men, except for one thing. The men get to be slime balls, and we have to be good girls. And then came along the late 1960s, the sexual revolution, and at which point the women just said, that whole we want to be like the men, we want to be like the men, we want to be like the men, they took their last card in the poker game, and they just put it on the table. And ever since that day, men rent. Why buy when you can rent? No man even bothered with liability again after that. until he turned around at 36 years old in Midtown Manhattan and realized he forgot to get married to see a used car lot as far as the eye can see. Now, I know this sounds rough, but somebody's got to say this stuff, because I meet people all the time. All the time I'm meeting people who are just postponing these things. You know, my daughter's getting married on Monday, thank God, and my brother-in-law said that his 15-year-old daughter was thinking about it, and you know, my wife's brother, his 15-year-old daughter was thinking about it. He said the way the Glazers work, it's likely that the Glazers, that my cousin's children will get married before me, because if I get married around the age my parents got married, because they're not observant, and they got married in their 30s, mid-30s. So by the time she would be in her mid-30s, my grandkids, because I already have like a 5-year-old grandkid, well, that kid will be, you know, she'll be where the Hasidic population gets married. So she said, my cousin's kids will probably get married before me. And that wasn't her complaining, by the way. She wasn't saying, wow, I better get married. That was her just stating a fact that everyone seems to take for granted, at least in the secular society. And you should know, all of the world population until last couple 100 years, but for thousands of years, every girl got married between 12 and 14, and every boy got married between 14 and 16. Now, there's not a man in this room who wouldn't have said that would have been a relief when they were 18 years old, to have his bread, as our sages call it, have his bread in the basket. Because it's nearly torture to be anywhere between 18 and 22 years old, single as a male. Not to mention these days it's dangerous. But what a pleasure your life would have been had you already had your bread in the basket during those years. Now, again, I'm not advocating for men to be getting married between 14 and 16, nor am I advocating for girls to get married 12 to 14. What I would be advocating is that society gets back to its healthiness so that we could go back to those standards. That would be great. If society was healthy enough to go back to that, that would be wonderful. But in the meantime, we're not there at all. Not at all, but at least a girl could potentially prepare herself by the time if she had the cutoff. She needs that deadline. Now, by the way, you might say, well, how does it work in Hasidic society? Where's the deadline? And the answer is your older sister. See, if you're a 9-year-old girl, or a 9-year-old boy, and your oldest sibling gets engaged at 18, that's the bar. You're a different 16-year-old when you turn 16. When you were 9 and your 18-year-old sibling got engaged and married at 18, you're a different 16-year-old when you're 16, right? The time is ticking, and you start maturing because there's a deadline, and it causes you to grow in ways you'd never grow. And I've been watching this because my oldest daughter got engaged at that age, a little younger, she was 17. And I watched all my daughters suddenly hit this growth track that grows them into marriage. But all the people, like any of you in the room who did not have siblings doing that, so you're on this totally other track. And I'm saying, create an artificial deadline and get tracked so that you don't deal with any more nonsense. So you can put your heart where it belongs, and that's in the committed hands of somebody who has no reasons.